Direct from the web, it's Billy Masters Live. And now, please welcome your host, Billy Masters.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Billy Masters Live. I am, of course, Billy Masters, and we're coming to you. We have a really special show today. Hopefully, everybody is able to hear me because we are having some technical issues, so I'm never quite sure. Dan Glosser will give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Thank you, Dan Glosser. It's a very professional show. Okay, anyway, welcome to Billy Masters Live. I am your host, obviously, Billy Masters. And today is Tuesday. Oh, my God, where is our thing? Today is Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. We are still in captivity, as Auntie Joan would probably say. This is close to captivity. Captivity for her would be, a dream captivity would be locked in Barney's for a weekend. And this is our tribute to Joan Rivers. And typically, I open with an anecdote about something from my past, but rather than talk about somebody else, I'm going to talk about Joan, because let's keep it all about Joan. And I'm going to share a story about when I first met Joan Rivers. So, I grew up in a suburb of Boston, and when I was in high school, so maybe like 14, I discovered Joan Rivers when she would guest host on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And when she was on the show, at the beginning of the show, Doc would sit down with her and he would plug her upcoming club dates. And he'd say, you know, Thursday, June 5th, she's going to be at Carlos and Charlie's. It was always Carlos and Charlie's. And then she's going to be at Caesar's Tahoe. And so I would write these down like a 14-year-old crazy person. And when the day would come, like if it was Thursday and I knew she was going to be at Carlos and Charlie's, I would call Carlos and Charlie's that afternoon. You got to bear in mind, long distance cost a lot of money back then. And I would call Carlos and Charlie's and I'd say, you know, hi, because, you know, my voice hadn't changed. Hi, I'd like to leave a message for Joan Rivers. And they'd say, okay, who's calling? And I'd say, it's Billy Masters. Can you just say that I called to wish her good luck tonight and for the rest of the run? And so I would just do this. I wouldn't leave a phone number. I wouldn't leave any message. I would just say my name and good luck for the show. And after like 6 months of this, she came to the Cape Cod Melody tent down in Hyannis. And I wasn't going because I wasn't of age. I didn't have a car. I couldn't drive. I wasn't going to the show, but I called up dutifully down to Hyannis and left her a message saying good luck for the show. And they said, great. Does she have your number? And I said, oh, sure she does. I'm in the book. And they'd say, well, give it to me just in case. So I gave her the number and I went out. Ironically enough, I went out on a date with a girl that night. I know. My life is crazy. And so I get home and my mother comes screaming from the kitchen, Joan Rivers, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what? Joan Rivers, blah, blah, blah. And I go, all I got is Joan Rivers. Apparently, when Joan got to the theater, she called up to return the call. First off, to return the call, but secondly, to find out, who the fuck is Billy Masters? Why does he keep calling me like some adolescent stalker? I know. I was a little like a stalker. And from that, we became friendly, like pen pals. I was telling one of our guests that I have these letters. She would send me letters from Caesar's Palace Stationery. She had a secretary that traveled with her who would type them and she'd sign them. And my first letter that I ever sent, and this was around the year that states, for those of you who are young, do not remember this. Years ago, states had a 4-letter abbreviation. So Massachusetts was MASS for Mass. We had just gone to 2-letter abbreviations. God, I sound so old. And stamps were 12 cents. And I sent her a letter from MA, Massachusetts, and she sent me back a letter saying, thank you for calling. Thanks for, I think I sent her a joke on her birthday. And she ended it by saying, it makes me very warm to know that I have a fan in Maine. Because she thought MA stood for Maine. Or she didn't, and she was making a joke. I don't know. So over the years, I had a lot of opportunities because of Joan. When she had the daytime show in New York and I was in college, she would invite me to come and spend time and write jokes. And she'd say to me, we'll call you an intern. We can't give you any money, but you'll meet a lot of people and have a great time. And that's how she was. She gave opportunities for me to perform, to open for her occasionally. Sometimes she'd say, you can do 3 minutes. And if I was terrible, she'd pull me off stage in 1 minute. Sometimes if I was doing well, I'd look in the wings and she'd go, keep going, keep going. So your best cheerleader that you ever had. And when I had taped a talk show pilot, Frontiers Magazine in Los Angeles did a little collage of us. And the top left was one of our first meetings. And then, we round, but the bottom one is one of our last times together. And somehow I think we look better there than we did when we were younger. But my favorite picture is I was about to go on stage to introduce her for some charity dinner in Boston. And she told me to write something and I could introduce her. And so she made me write down what I was going to say. And then she had to look it over and she corrected it. So there we are going over my notes. And she's like, yeah, I don't think that, or this is a better joke. So, very important to me and my life. And so we have a lot of people here who have similar experiences, and I'm going to bring them on one at a time, but then we will all talk together. So the first person I'm bringing on is Dan Glosser. Dan Glosser, because he goes back probably as far as I do, and even longer. Dan Glosser is, God, I don't even know how to describe you. I mean, a producer, a writer, a musician, a raconteur. He has money and sleeps with young men. I think that's how Joan would want me to describe you. I have no idea if he's good in bed, but he's in bed a lot. So give it up for Dan Glosser.
I am what? Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, I see you with young boys all the time. I assume you're sleeping with them.
No. They just like to hang out with me.
Dan, how did you meet Joan Rivers?
Well, I came out to LA to do 42nd Street. I was the pianist in the pit. Okay. And harpist. I was just here like maybe a week. I'd never been out here before. And the harpist.
What year is this, roughly?
1984.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the harpist said to me one night, he says, you need to meet Jason Dill. And I'm like,
who was Joan Rivers' hairdresser?
I didn't know who. What's a Jason Dill? So we go to the Rose Tattoo, and there's Jason, and we meet, and I didn't know anything about him, nothing. And so we had the rest of the evening, and then he proceeds to tell me everything about Joan, and I'm like, oh, what about you? He couldn't stop talking about Joan.
Because he was really cute.
Yeah, it was all about Joan. Joan was his life. And I'm thinking, okay, great. I didn't put a whole lot to it. But then he brings me to the AIDS benefit she did at the Backlot.
Studio One Backlot, yep.
And he brings me back to say hello to her. And I'm standing there and I said, my parents took me to see you at the downstairs or the upstairs. And you were coming out of the kitchen. And she says, I'm still coming out of the kitchen. And right away, she just adopted me. She gave me her phone number and her address and put it on a card for me, which I still have. And then I find out Joan invited me over to her house in Bel Air for Sunday morning with Jason. So while he's doing her hair.
Ambasac, right? Yeah. God, I haven't thought of that in years.
So I go in there, and I hadn't been to Bel Air ever.
Oh, wow.
So I go in there, and I go to this big, massive home, and they're all yelling, "Come on upstairs." We're upstairs. I go upstairs, and it's Joan's got her head in the sink getting her hair washed, and Jason's washing her hair, and it's just the three of us. And Joan says, "Sit down." So I sit down on the toilet, and we're looking at each other, and I'm like laughing because this is so random.
Right.
She says, "You want to call somebody, don't you?" So I said, "Okay." Yes, I do. And this is before my matinee on a Sunday. So I was, so after that, I knew she had me. And then after that, she just kept including me with Jason with activities because she wanted him to have some friends.
Did you sleep with Jason?
Yes.
Okay. Would you consider you dated him? Oh, all right. So if you only slept with him once, sorry. So he wasn't very good in bed, is what you're saying.
Well, let me just tell you, Joan asked me years and years later, we had dinner after her sister passed away. We had dinner, and she looks at me and she says, "So how did we meet?" I can't remember how we met. And I said, "Well, I had a blind date with Jason." And then without a breath, she says, "So how big was it?" And I'm like,
"Oh, how big was it?"
I'm like, "Oh my God." So I said, "Well, considering he was short
and tiny,
and tiny, but she said, "Well, he always bragged about it, so I always wanted to kind of know firsthand." So that was it,
And we should mention, because Jason was her hairdresser, but really became her best friend and confidant. And when he got sick,
picked out her, did her glow.
He was everything to her. And when he got sick, that was one of the things that really hit home for AIDS. It's funny because she had known people who died, but she told me she never cried as much as when Jason passed away.
Well, that was a big loss.
Huge.
Huge loss. And he, he got me involved. Right. He brought me into that little fold and asked Joan if there was a job for me on the show, on the Late Show.
Which show? Which is the Fox show?
The Fox show. So they gave me an intern, not an intern, but a PA job. So I was running around all day, and then they would have me upstairs with a glass of water at the host chair. I mean, at the guest chair before they go out to see her. Mm-hmm. So I had to stand there and talk to everybody.
Wow. But that must have been great.
It was. Well, I didn't, I decided to stop being shy and think about okay, who's coming on? And then I would do my homework to see if I saw them at a Broadway show, because that was something that I knew nobody would talk about to them.
Right. Of course.
So it got
nobody in Hollywood cared about theater.
No. And I would say these random things that would get them completely thrown off, like who's this kid? So it was fun. It was I think I'm the only one that had a good time.
But who cares?
Who cares? And my office was next to Joan and across from Edgar.
Oh God.
So I got the juice.
You're in the line of fire, as they say. Okay, Dan, we're gonna bring you back, but I'm just gonna make the rounds, everybody. Okay, my next guest has an amazing story, and I'm gonna show a picture because I was just a kid in Medford when I saw this headline, which was Joan Rivers threatens to sue female impersonator. He's using my jokes. See, I can't see. And I remember when Joan sued Frank Marino. And then she made a joke about it when she had him on the show. And she said, "Oh, I can't remember. Did I sue you? Did you sue me?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you can't remember. You remember." Frank Marino is a legend. I mean, to call him a legend is even minimizing, because what he did was, it was as if you were seeing Joan Rivers, and the lawsuit had come. Well, I'll let him tell the lawsuit. But please give it up for my next guest, Mr. Frank Marino. Hey, darling. Oh, I know. Yeah, left or right. I know.
I know, it's hard. I'm gonna go straight on.
I know. I don't know either. Now, I remember the lawsuit. I didn't know her at the time, but the crux of the lawsuit, if I remember correctly, was she didn't care if you used jokes from the previous year's show. You were using some of the current jokes, and she felt very territorial about them. Was that it?
Basically.
Yeah.
Basically. She saw that, well, she was very helpful to get me into the original show I was in, which was An Evening of Lacage in Las Vegas. But when I got to Las Vegas, the way the impersonators in the show would do Diana Ross and sing a Diana Ross song, I would do comedy and do it from the album that she shot, I believe, at the Studio One, right? Or Backlot, what they called it over in California. And so that was my material that I would use. Remember, it was Queen of England and Elizabeth Taylor. So I was imitating her comedy from the album, like the Diana Ross impersonator would sing the Diana Ross song.
Right. It just happened to be jokes she was singing in the big room at Caesars.
Right. Now, I was 17 at the time. I didn't know from comedians and don't tell jokes and this and that. Right. I was doing a television show with Milton Berle, and she called me on the phone, and you know how that is with that voice on your answering machine. And I was like, how cool is that? Yeah. But she's like, I really want to read the script before you do this show so I know it's not my jokes. The good thing was Milton had his own writers, did Joan Rivers-esque jokes. We did the show. It was fine. And it wasn't even her. It was Edgar would send people into our show all the time. And I did try to change it, but to say do it, an entire act changed is not easy.
Yeah.
Lucky.
And how long an act was it?
Well, I would open the show for 20 minutes and then I'd come on for 3 or 4 minutes in between each other star. Right. So that being said, I thought but when you change a joke, you can't change it like this. Like, I would say Elizabeth Taylor is so fat. One of her jokes, she'd stand in front of the microwave and scream, hurry. I couldn't change it till she stood in front of the toaster and screamed, hurry. Right. It's just, yes. So,
and people were waiting for it too.
Yeah, I had no ambition to be a comedian, nothing like that. I was a female impersonator, and I didn't know what to do. It happened just when she had left Carson. He was mad at her, and all the other comedians were afraid to be friends with her because he would get mad and they wanted to get on his show. Right. So they all started sending me jokes saying, here's a Joan Rivers-esque joke that I think you could use in your act. So I was very lucky because of like the Inquirer and People magazine, all these people doing stories. The first time an impersonator was actually sued by a celebrity. So I did get a lot of help. As I grew up, I understood what it was that was the problem. Right. And obviously it went full circle and she was wonderful to me.
And I just want to show a couple of pictures. So here you are when I think this is one of the first times you met her. Is that right?
Yes, that was about 1980, the first time.
Okay. And again, I want to put into perspective for people watching this who don't remember the 80s or weren't around in the 80s, that the Inquirer was like Facebook. And that was the only way that, first off, it was enormously powerful because it was the only way to get to the people other than mainstream media. There was no other way. So it must have been huge for your career. Suddenly, you must have been in enormous demand.
Yeah, the Inquirer called me up. I forget his name, but the head of the Inquirer at that time called me up, and I was half sleeping. It was very early, and he said, "I just want you to know," because they were just doing a story, and then he goes, "I want you to know you're a star." And I said, "Who is this?" He goes, "You have the full cover of the National Enquirer, not like one of the 10 spots, the full cover." And I was like, wow. But you're right. I didn't know the magnitude of it either at that point, but my life went crazy at that point. And that
let me show the cover again. So this again, it almost looks like a paste up, like it looks like something a kid in 3rd grade would do. I mean,
and so does my makeup back then.
Well, and so I'm going to actually now I have the later pictures, but I want to show a picture around the daytime era. Now, again, that's gorgeous makeup.
Mm-hmm. It changed. And what was sad was I have $1 million of jewelry lent to me by the jewelers in that photo. And there were other drag queens on the show, and those rhinestones are huge. I think that's the last time I wear real jewelry.
And that was the thing, is that event. And again, it was kind of good publicity for both of you. How did that lawsuit get settled? Did it just get dropped? Did it cost you money? What happened?
Yeah, well, it was very uncomfortable because I was working at the Riviera, and Pia Zadora and her husband, Michelle Mariklis, owned the Riviera. At that time, all these hotels weren't here. So 2 doors down was Caesar's Palace across the street. And she's performing with Pia Zadora opening for her. With a 40-piece orchestra, because Pia was the first opening act in the world that uses 40 pieces. But how many billionaires? Oh,
exactly.
Mr. Rickless would bring me back to see them. We'd be in arbitration all day, and we'd walk back, and Mr. Rickless would be like, Joan, you know Frank. And I was like, oh my God. But it was very uncomfortable. I wanted to do everything she wanted me to do. You know, I just had to figure it out. But I was so young. I was like 20. He paid all the bills, and it went as far as arbitration. The outcome was, well, she sued me for $5 million, just so you know. So could you imagine? Thank God we settled. I was like $80 short, but we worked it out, and we became great friends after that. She was just wonderful to me.
She adored you. I can just say she adored you. And I'm going to just show a video that will kind of prove how much she loved you. First off, I know firsthand because when you came on the daytime show, I was there that day. It was you, a woman who played her, and somebody
Holly
else.
Ferris was her name. Yeah.
And who's the third person?
Gary D and Bobby Bruno.
Oh, Gary D from Atlantic. He did Atlantic City a lot. Okay. Anyway, so this is a video, and I can't tell you how many people have sent me videos like this. Joan once she kept up with technology, and a friend of mine had a baby. She sent a video welcoming the baby into the world. She would do things like this all the time. So this is a video she sent to you when you were celebrating your 25th year performing. Right. So let me just show this clip.
Surprise! Frank Marino, this is Joan Rivers, and 25 years you've been stealing my fucking material. I am flabbergasted. I mean, when I think of all the jokes that I have written that you have taken and used and probably gotten better laughs than I did, I'm delighted. I'm thrilled that you've been doing my act for 25 years. I'm thrilled that you've taken my audiences for 25 years. I'm thrilled that you've stolen my clothes for 25 years. I'm not stupid, Frank. I know when I give them to the thrift shop, I know who comes in the next day. By the way, the one you're wearing now still has menstrual blood in it. Time to get a new one. Anyhow, I just want to say I love you. I think you're wonderful. I think you're an artist. And I hope we have another 25 years together on the Strip.
That was Joan Rivers, and I think it really sort of sums up. And just to the point of giving clothes to thrift shops, she did do that. And I remember it was Sonny Bono's third wife, that Susie Colioli, whatever her name was, that Joan would donate clothes, and the money went to charity, and she'd get a tax write-off, and people would rush there and say, oh, she had just dropped off clothes, and Joan would drop off clothes. Did you have any of Joan's actual clothes?
Yeah, I do. I have but actually I got them like when they did the auction after she passed.
Oh, the Julian's auction, yeah.
And when I actually got in, I don't know if you know, in the MGM portion of the Disney Resort in Florida, they had that antique shop when you first walked in. They had a Joan Rivers dress that I got there. So I have two that went that way. And I have a beautiful beaded one that she left at the Riviera Hotel, which was where I was performing. She had performed there, sat on something, and the hotel paid for the Bob Mackie dress, which was just sitting in the president's closet. And he said, God, you want it? And I have that.
You didn't have to ask you twice. Frank, I love you. Just stay there. We'll get back to you. Okay, sure. Hold on. Now wait. Now, how do I get rid of you? I love you. Goodbye. So now I'm going to go to, you're going to notice a trend. It's a lot of gay people in Joan Rivers' life. And she did that by design. She preferred to be around gay people. And she loved talent more than anything else. And if you could keep up with her, if you know, I told the story off the air that when you showed up at Joan Rivers' house or in the dressing room, you better be ready to participate, because if not, you were out, get out. Well, somebody who really participated and got to know her on many, many different levels is a legend himself, Mr. Charles Busch.
Hello.
Hello, my darling. How are you?
I know. I've been doing so many shows with you. I'm the Topo Gigio to your Ed Sullivan.
It's all right.
Your show.
You know, I look, if I could have you on every day, you know I would. And I know a little bit, but I don't know. How did you first meet Joan?
Well, I met her numerous times before I actually, got to know her. I think she was she's in New York. She was always at the theater, and she saw everything from Broadway down to the most obscure off Broadway shows. She saw everything. And so I think she may have been the first celebrity that ever came to see one of my plays. And
wow.
So she saw a bunch of things. And then I would do different benefits with her, these stage readings of the movie Caged, that we were part of this huge, crazy cast with Lily Tomlin and Lipsinka. I mean, just the most crazy, eclectic group of people. So I kind of knew her. We would chat in the green room. But I got to be friends with her. I guess, I'm not good with years. What was the year of the documentary came out about her?
Oh, like 2012-ish?
Because I knew her while they were shooting. I got to really know her when they were shooting that documentary.
Oh, that was, you were preparing the play, the one for Edinburgh.
Basically what happened was out of the blue, the phone rang, and it's Joan Rivers' voice. She doesn't introduce herself. She just pick up the phone. Just I'm working a performance art piece. Would you help me write it? And I was like, who's this? Then and I said I didn't really want to get involved. I got busy, but I threw some ideas at her on the phone, and then about 4 years later, the phone rang again, and I pick it up, and all I hear is, "So I did what you said." I was like, "Who's this?" And so then we again, she asked me if I would work on this piece with her, and I said no, but why don't you let me read it? So she sent it to me, and it was a piece that turned into this play that she did, and the idea was that it was a play where she played herself backstage in the green room doing the red carpet, and then everyone.
I saw it in Beverly Hills before it went to Europe, and this, I believe, is the playbill from it at the Cannon Theater.
So anyway, but in this play, every once in a while, she would go off like into a spotlight and tell stories about her life, and she wanted to be very revealing. So when I said, I'll read it, and then when I read it, it was very funny, but she really wasn't saying anything that I hadn't heard her do just on a talk show. So I called her back and I told her that, and I said, I don't really want to write it with you, but I really wanted to get to know her, basically. I wanted to see her apartment. So I said, well, why don't I just come over every day this week, and I'll interview you, and we'll tape it, and you can get your assistant to transcribe the tapes, and then I'll shape them into monologues for you. Free of charge. I just wanted to get to know her, So why not? She was kind of a little bit low ebb at that moment, and so she was very, very available. And I went, so every day that week I went over, and I was kind of like a therapist, because I could ask her anything because she owned the tapes. It was her thing. So I just it was very personal, and I'd been in therapy, so I knew how to ask questions. So nothing was withheld, and it was a very bonding experience, as you can imagine, because she would sob and rage, and I just fell so in love with her. I'd always been a fan, but just seeing her in this incredibly vulnerable way was.
Well, the thing is and by the way, it was 2009 that it was filmed. Okay. I just looked it up.
But 2007 probably is when I got to know her.
Right. Okay. Well, clearly the feelings were reciprocated because I found this video, which I think kind of sums up. Please don't choke on my. Oh, if you're gonna die of choking, do it on my show because I'm really
not
rich.
Virus, please. It's solid drunk.
Well,
I'm fine.
anyway. Oh yeah, all right. Well, I was very concerned for a second. Okay, so here's a clip of Joan. She was asked to present you with an award, and so a slightly edited version. But this is what Joan had to say about you. Let's roll the clip.
Because they asked me to give this award, and I usually don't give awards, especially unless it's somebody I really, really like, so that limits it very much. And, Charles Busch is such an amazing man. He truly deserves the Legend Award, which is what the award is called. He's an actor, he's a playwright, he's a trailblazer, a Tony nominee, won at Sundance Best Performance Award, a Drama Desk Award for Career Achievement, known within the theater community as a wonderful, kind, nice, generous, smart, relevant. Everyone I was asking, give me one word for Charles. And humorous. Also, I wanted to add great humanity. If you've ever seen some of his movies, there's great humanity, there's great pathos, because he's been through a lot that a lot of your scholarship people are just learning what they're going to have to go through in life. And Charles not only took his life, but turned it around and made drag into an art form, which I think is an amazing thing to do. So I thought Charles may have me, but we all have Charles, and that's what makes it so wonderful. He's a joy. It gives me great joy that you are, my darling. It gives me such joy to give this to you because I love you so much. And you truly, besides are a great friend, you're a great artist. So with joy, I give you this award.
It's just beautiful because you can tell that she obviously meant what she said. Because first off, if she didn't mean it, she would not have gone. She never ate at those events. She went, did her business, and left. And to get her to go out of the house to do something like that was, unless she was getting the award, she wasn't going.
Yeah, no, I was kind of embarrassed to ask her, you know, and it was this wonderful group. I'm blanking out because I didn't sleep well last night. Live Out Loud. Live Out Loud. Anyway, so they were giving this award, and then they said, you know, do you have somebody interesting who could present it to you? And so, you know, I didn't really want to ask her, but I asked her, and she said yes. And they were so thrilled because, you know, she was obviously a much bigger star than me. So yeah, but yeah, it was just so touching to be asked. Actually, I have to admit that in asking her, I had some plastic surgery done not long before, and I was sort of swollen still, and I had put in my calendar that at least 3 months before I'd be seen in public, and suddenly they gave me the award like just a few weeks afterwards. So when they said, you know, find a celebrity to give it to you, I thought, well, if I ask Joan, she's so stylized looking that next to her I won't look so, you know, fake. And so that was the idea. No,
but I bet she looked at you and said, "What have you done?" I'm sure she noticed.
Oh, well, she was, you know, my advisor. You know, I loved, Bob Mackie had a great line about her that he said to me. He said, "Oh, I love Joan. She shows up at fittings with blood still in her hair." Yeah, no, just. But I just adored her, and she. Shortly after we started working together and had that great experience, she invited me and my partner at the time, Eric, to Thanksgiving at her place, and I thought, oh, you know, Cher is going to be there, and you know, all the stars, yeah. and it turned out it was just, you know, it was her sister and her nieces and her, you know, neighbors and
all of her gay friends.
And at first I was a little disappointed, but then Eric said to me, he said, "Don't you realize we're fam? This is like
you're part of the inner circle.
Yeah, this is better than if, you know, the celebrities are there." And so yeah, and she always had me seated next to her. And you know, the thing I have to say about her though is, you know, what always amazed me was she's this big personality, outrageous personality, and so funny, and yet of all the celebrities I've known or I've encountered, surprisingly, she was the most interested in other people and didn't suck the air out of the room. You know, and I never felt, because I used to go often with her to the theater. I would accompany her, and I never felt like her walker.
Right.
You know, and she was so interesting. You know, there was always present was this kind of girl with her nose stuck pushed against the glass, looking in, and you know, and it was so touching that I felt that I knew, you know, Pepper January, you know, her first
Comedy
name.
with spice. Yeah.
Like I felt like I know that girl because
Right.
she's still present. Yeah, no, and just the fact that she would come to my house.
Your
for
Christmas party she came to.
Yeah, you know, and the first time she showed up, she was kind of in her kind of elegant sort of Mrs. Rosenberg persona and rather quiet. She came late in the evening, and there was kind of a group of us left, and she was sort of this kind of elegant lady, and I had to kind of feed her and tell the Betty Davis story, Joan, and then she came out, and of course it turned out to be a wonderful evening.
I want to just, since you mentioned it, I just want to show for people who didn't know her house in New York, which most people didn't, and the Thanksgiving dinner. Now, this was an intimate sit-down dinner for 40. So here's the table. And just another view of it. So, oh my God, Charles, you're frozen. You're frozen. Look at you. Oh my God, now I can see the scars. Anyway, Charles, we're going to get you back. I hope we're going to get you back in a second. If we don't get you back, click back in. Oh, wait. You're back. You're back. You're back. It was a pretty picture of you frozen, though.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to show the Thanksgiving table. So,
oh, yeah, no, I just was extraordinary.
And here you are at Thanksgiving dinner with her in 2013.
Well, I love a blurred photo. My favorite pictures when they're blurred.
Because it's God's filter.
I prefer it that way.
And I'll also pick up on something you said about being the outsider. She was always that person. She was always excited when we'd get to a dressing room and somebody sent flowers. You'd think she'd be like, yeah, flowers. She wanted to read every card. She was excited when they'd send a car. She loved a car. Took nothing for granted.
You know, one time I was with her at Hal Prince's Christmas party, which is most incredible. Was the producer, director Hal Prince, and a legendary party. And there were a couple of years where I was on the list, then I got off the list, you know. But it was at one point. Barbara Cook got up to sing for Sondheim, asked her if she would sing, you know, and then they had about 4 generations of Broadway stars singing around the piano, and Joan and I were sort of standing in the back, and in a certain sense, she was the most famous person in the room. If you're just going to talk about fame, you know, right. And she, with absolutely sincere, turns to me and says, "Can you believe we're here?" Right. And that's so typical of her, that feeling of just that she's still that girl.
And a big fan. And the other thing just about that particular party, for years, Joan was not invited and always wanted to go and kind of had to ask, why haven't I been invited? They said, well, we never thought you'd come. And because people would think she was above that and, oh, she's not going to do that. She was the biggest fan in the world, but she really was sort of taken for granted. Oh, she won't go, or she doesn't want to do that. And she loved all of that.
And because she was never, I think, you know, a big dream of hers was to be a dramatic actress. And that was really, I think, the first dream. And I think to be part of the New York theater community was very important to her. And she never really was. Even though, I mean, she replaced Linda Lavin on Broadway and Neil Simon's Broadway Bound and got rave reviews. But she was never really, I think, quite accepted the way she
and to the point that even at the end, even though she had starred on Broadway 4 times, they did not want to dim the lights, and there was this huge outpouring that yes, you have to, and they did, but everything was a fight, everything. Charles, thank you. We're going to be back to you. I just got to get everybody in. We'll be back.
Okay.
The next person who's a guest, God, Jackie Beat. I never even know how to describe Jackie Beat. A writer, a performer, a comedian, a female impersonator, one of the smartest people in the room when she's in the room. And Joan Rivers adored her. Joan Rivers had her as a writer for the Golden Hanger, you know, the Oscar wrap-up, all those shows. And Joan Rivers also did something else for her, which we'll talk about. Our next guest, Miss Jackie Beat. Hello, darling.
Oh, hi.
I hope we didn't get you before you went to makeup.
Well, yeah, I woke up like this, as Beyonce says. No, hi. This is a little bright. Hold on. Please forgive me.
That's all right. It's a lovely shoulder that I see there.
That was a little bright.
That's all right. It's daytime makeup. I'm glad you went subtle today.
Yes, I'm putting the B in subtle. How are you?
I'm fine, sweetheart. How did you meet Joan Rivers?
I'm trying to remember how I actually met her. I think I met her through Tony Tripoli, her head writer and great friend. For when he was her head writer for Fashion Police.
Fashion Police, thank you. I couldn't think of the name.
Other things. I know that he opened for her quite a bit, and so yeah, through Tony, I think they were always looking for writers because I guess I should look right into the camera. How does this?
Yeah, I know. You want to look at me, but you can't.
Yeah, because it's so funny because on Fashion Police, I'll jump right in.
Yeah, please.
She would make one or two jokes about an outfit. And what most people don't realize is, first of all, it can't be about the outfit. If the joke is actually about the outfit, you're in trouble.
Right.
And so it was a lot of Wikipedia and Googling people and finding out what they did and then making fun of the title of one of the movies they were in. Right. But she only made one or two jokes about each look. But, she had 8, 9, 10 writers writing 8, 9, 10 jokes each. Mm-hmm. And that's why she always hit it out of the park. And I have joked about this in the past, like it was a little bit of a joke sweatshop. But I'll tell you one thing, it taught me how to write a fucking joke. Can I say the F word? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Fuck. It taught me how to write a joke, how to, not be too precious. I would never pitch something that wasn't a completed joke. But if it wasn't the most hilarious and maybe it was just weird, or I thought maybe it would make one of the other writers think of it in a different way, or, they could bounce off of it. So I just think I learned that comedy is not precious. You just throw spaghetti against the wall, and if it sticks. And I've said this many times. I just posted a picture of Joan and I together. You would sit in that room. And of course, Joan never laughed. I mean, comedians, as a general rule, they don't laugh. So,
unless they're on camera, then they laugh.
Well, of course, and at themselves. But she had her arm over a chair, like it was the body language was amazing. Just she had her arm kind of over a chair, listening to the jokes, and then she would turn to her assistant and just go, yeah, that one. And if you could make her smile, I mean, honestly, because she'd just sit there and, like Stonehenge.
Right. Well, and she knew Stonehenge. But I learned as a writer, she would not, and same thing, she wouldn't laugh, but she'd say to me very often, what would be the next step? How could you push that joke more? And I learned very quickly that you can have the grain of a joke, but you need two toppers. You don't have to use them, but you need them. And I always would say, and even when I started writing the column, you want to make everybody happy. And she's like, you're holding back, push further. What's the next joke? You've got something more there. It might offend somebody. Good.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, I have so many memories. Like I do remember her once telling me that writing a joke, writing jokes was like math. And I remember the moment she said that, I was like, that's kind of how I feel. Like, you can tell whether the equation works or not. And obviously there are some jokes that just don't, like, you can't figure out exactly why they're funny and they're absurdist, or, I'm a big fan of theater of the ridiculous, obviously. But when you're writing jokes, especially for another person, these were jokes that you had to be able to read. I mean, obviously she had to deliver them, and she would do it and make it look like it was coming off the top of her head, which was amazing.
Right.
But it had to be funny on paper. It wasn't the kind of thing that, like, oh, this only works. Well, then there were jokes that did only work for Joan.
How hard was it for you as a performer to get into her head and her speech patterns, which were very specific?
Well, I mean, first of all, she's iconic, and I mean, you watch her for 5 minutes and you get it. So right. I didn't think that was that difficult. I have to tell you that I wrote for a lot of different people all at the same time. And I think I was, writing for Joan on Fashion Police the same time I was writing a book with Ross Matthews. And I'll never forget once I said something or pitched something to him, and he was like, you realize you're not with Joan Rivers right now. Like, I'm the non-threatening, fun-loving gay guy next door. So that horrible vagina joke will not, Speaking of vagina jokes, one of my all-time favorite things ever, and one of my major accomplishments in my mind, when we sat around that table at Melissa's house in Pacific Palisades, I mean, it was always like, oh my God. We would pitch jokes, and it was just sort of like joke, joke, joke. But I would occasionally try to get her to do something different, like, Joan's Poetry Corner. And then she would tell, a terrible beat poem or a limerick about a celebrity. And it never caught on. They never did that. But once I said, what if Joan said this joke? And then I wrote a really funny, vagina joke, which nobody loved a vagina joke more than Joan.
Oh, yes.
And I said, but it's like at the end of the show, and she says the joke, and all of a sudden sirens go off, balloons drop, confetti, and instead of the oversized check, that they give the customer at the supermarket who was the 1 millionth customer, they come out with a big, essentially the shape and size of an oversized check, sign that says 1 millionth vagina joke. See her literally light up like, oh my God, yes. Like she could picture it. It was such a moment, and they did it, and it was really good.
She loved things like that. I remember, and Dan will, I'm sure, remember this, on the Fox show. After the first week, when they started the second week, she had an idea to do a first week anniversary show. Remember when Elton was here? And it was like, yeah, it was 5 shows ago, but that was the joke. And Fox didn't get it. And, there were things like that. But I want to talk about you. She had come to your aid for a very personal health issue.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Of course. Well, I had a congenital defect in both hips, and I'm sure being, overweight and wearing women's shoes for, 25 years at the time didn't help matters. But it was to the point where I could barely walk, and I was crying myself to sleep. You would think I was wearing flats, and it didn't help. I remember I wrote a play called Whatever Happened to Busty Jane, and it was this mashup of 80s gay porn with, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I was like, how am I going to get gay seats into theater, or gay asses into theater seats? And I was like, I'm going to take Baby Jane and 80s gay porn and put it together. So we did Whatever Happened to Busty Jane, blah, blah, blah. And I was in New York, and I was literally on the phone begging people to bring me pain pills. And that is so not me. If you know me.
No, that's me.
So it was bad. It was bone on bone, speaking of you. And so I decided I'm finally going to get this surgery, but I don't have insurance. There is not a drag queen union.
Right. Of course.
I had just bought a house, which, boo-hoo, white lady problems, but I'm just saying that down payment, I had scrimped and saved.
You had nothing left.
I had nothing left, and then all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. I have to have this surgery or I'm going to be in a wheelchair. So I just was shameless, and I wrote what I think was the perfect pitch, and we did it on this thing called Give Forward. I think that's what it's called, and it's similar to GoFundMe, but it's specifically for medical, procedures. And I just said, if I've ever made you laugh, pitch in $5, and it was a little slightly humiliating, but there's something about asking for what you need. I mean, the surgery was, $125,000. And so anyway, to get to Joan, which is why we're here, she agreed to host the benefit in New York. We had a benefit in LA and a benefit in New York, and
here's a photo from backstage.
Yes, there's everybody. Oh my God. Everybody is there.
Everybody is there.
Including.
And of course, and let me show this picture of the two of you, which is fabulous.
Yes, and I feel terrible. I just posted that yesterday, but I blurred Robin Bird because.
Sorry, Robin. Well,
no, listen, I adore Robin, but wasn't her birthday yesterday.
Exactly. I'm going to just piggyback on everybody's stories. I guess it was 15 years ago, and my dog had been hit by a car and almost lost her leg and needed thousands of dollars of surgery. And I didn't want to ask for help either, because it's like, there are people far worse off than me. But my webmaster said, we'll just put it out there and whoever wants to give. And I remember Bruce Valanche and so many people. And the person who gave the most in practically half of the surgery was Joan, and never said anything about it, just sent it.
Well, because it was
dogs too.
A mashup of a gay man and his dog. So, yeah. Oh my God, the stories that I have. First of all, I got to tell you, sitting around that table, there were always snacks, of course, because you need blood sugar to be funny. And first of all, I remember looking over at her and seeing a streak, I think it was day glow green. No joke. Streak in her hair. One of her nails, let me show mine because I did them. One of her nails was blue, just one blue nail. And I thought, this is how the bitch does it. This is how she stays young. She sits in that chair and she's like, what are the young people doing?
And it's funny, I didn't mention it, but since you brought it up, in the Charles Busch introduction, the nails are all light blue or sea mist, and then one is green.
Yeah.
And if you go back and look, you'll see that. So she did things like that all the time.
She was sitting next to me once and got my profile, and I just felt her looking at me, and I said, I really want to get this done, and I still haven't. Plastic surgery free since 1963. I said, I really want to get this done, and she just looked at me and said, do it. Do it, because it's bothering me, it's bothering you. And then, oh my God, she was hilarious. She goes, have something to eat, because ultimately she was just a Jewish mother, and that's what everybody needs to know. Have something to eat. So I reached for a macaroon. And then she goes, have a look. I reach for another. A couple minutes go by. I reach for another, and she gives me a look like, you fat bitch.
Thank you. I said A.
Yeah, these are for everyone. Oh my God. Food. I think I've told this story a million times, but once she was in New York instead of LA, because it was Fashion Week, and I just happened to be there doing a show. So everybody was pitching their jokes via email, but I could physically be there. So they said, come to her apartment in New York. Oh my God. I mean, nothing can prepare you. It is so over the top, but gorgeous. I don't know how she pulled it off, because it's everything Trump wants to be, but he has no taste.
Right,
so
exactly.
it is over the top and ostentatious in a way, but then it's simultaneously like tasteful and comfortable. So I walk in and she's like, "Are you hungry?" First thing out of her mouth all the time. "I think there's some food around the corner." I think there's some food around the corner. I walk around the corner into the kitchen. There is a man in a tuxedo with a rolling tray covered in silver with lamb chops, like caviar, seriously. And I was one of 3 people there. It was me, Tony Tripoli, and another producer. And you know, she doesn't eat.
No, Altoids and wine. People should know. Altoids and wine.
Occasionally she'll pick at something just so you can't
Off
drink.
your plate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring everybody in. So hold on a second. Just stay right there. Let's see how I do this. Okay. Oh, this is now going to be one for the record books. We got
30 seconds.
What?
I need to step out for 30 seconds.
Go. I'll take you out. Go. Hi, Dan Glosser.
Hey.
Okay, and we've got Charles Busch.
Hi, Charles.
Yeah. Frank Marino. And when I see Jackie Beat come back, I will click her in. But I'm going to ask a question of everyone. We'll kind of go like around, in a clockwise. Thank you for the Fox mug. Dan, I love you. Okay, so I want to ask, because everybody has a story. What was like the nicest or most touching story that stands out for you that she did for you or towards you? Dan, do you have anything?
Well, she came to be on one of my talk shows. So I went over and surprised her one day, and in front of the producer, she says to me, "So what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I work on the show." She said, "What other shows are you working on?" And I rambled off a few of the things at CBS. And I said, "You know, if it wasn't for you and Edgar giving me that little $300 a week job, I wouldn't have this and a pension and health insurance and blah, 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 blah. That's what you did for me." And I caught her off guard, and she was a little like, "Oh," like, you know, when people do favors, like they don't think about the aftermath.
Right.
And she gave me a hug, and she says, I thanked her, and she says, "Where's my commission?" That, but she was lovely, great to me, just
right
to me. And I was just there. She just included me like a family member.
Yeah, she never thought much about it, but if she put herself in your shoes, she'd know what it meant. Charles, what about you?
Well, in a certain sense, the clip you showed earlier was very touching. But I do remember, though, when after I'd wrote those monologues for her for that play, and she said, "Oh, you have to get paid," and I said, "No, and I really don't want to get paid." And it was just, I got to be friends with you. And she insisted on it. So she said, "Have your manager call my lawyer." So he called him, and within 2 seconds, it got so ugly, and so I said to my manager, Jeff Melnick, I said, "Just skip it. The whole point was I just want to be friends with her." So then I go to, I guess, Thanksgiving, and I'm sitting next to her, and I feel her hand on my thigh, and I'm thinking, are we going to Sunset Boulevard territory? And I look down, and she's handed me an envelope. So I surreptitiously under the table, I look in the envelope, and it's $5,000 in cash. So wow. So I thought it'd be rude to not take it. I said to her, I whispered to her, I said, "I would have fucked you anyway." That's what they all say. Yeah.
That's great. Marino, what do you got, Frank?
Well, she's done a lot for me, obviously, over the years. But she'd always bring me up, like if she was on a talk show of something. Once she was talking about plastic surgery on Entertainment Tonight, and she says, "I'm having plastic surgery not to look like me. Frank Marino's having surgery to look like me. If I have any more, I'll end up looking like him." And just crazy little things like that. She actually, I think everything spiritually went wild when that show we did on the afternoon show where you were there.
Yeah.
She said, "What would you do if I died?" to the impersonator. And I said, well, I guess I'd have to join Legends in Concert. And that's actually where I'm performing now. So somehow it ended up 27
put
years
it out
later.
in the world.
Yes. And I would have in a million years wouldn't have guessed that. So
See?
she was just like they all said, just very giving of herself and her time. And it wasn't like other celebrities where it's all about them. People who, like you said, I got backstage day one. I was 17 years old. Who does that anymore?
Right. No, nobody. Jackie, let's get Jackie in here. Hi, sweetheart. Okay, give us a nice story, Jackie.
My computer was dying. I needed to go upstairs and get the power cord.
That's okay.
Well, here's the thing, seriously, Charles is so dead on when he says, I think Frank just said it. You're all dead on, and I love you all. You're all dead. No, it was never about Joan, whoever just said that. She didn't make it about herself. And you would think, from the outside, most people would have just assumed that she was, this loud mouth who always made it about herself. So when she gave, she got us tickets, me and two of the other writers, to see her at some casino, that's 90 minutes away. We drove there. She opened for Don Rickles. And from my understanding, he would open for her, she would open for him. And it was one of the most amazing things I had ever seen. She was on fire. This woman was 80 years old at the time, dropping to the ground, flipping over, like bending over a bar stool to make her, anal sex joke. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. So 2 days later, we're at her house, to pitch jokes. And I said, Joan, the other night was amazing. And she just looked at me like, don't start, because that's who she was.
Hated that.
People were not, and I didn't, of course, pick up on it. I said, people were not laughing. They were screaming. And she's like, that's enough. We are all comedians. We are all artists. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to hear it, but oh my God. To be at the top of your game in your early 80s, that's why it's so upsetting to me. And, people are like, oh, she had a good run. I'm like, honey, she was at the top of her game when she left us.
Right. I'm gonna, I have two things, which the first one is the later one, which is when she was on the red carpet for all the shows. I was not working with her at the time. I was doing my own thing. I had the column. When I would get to the red carpet and see her, she'd call me over and she'd say, just stand here. You're going to have the best view of everyone. You're going to have more information for your column than you could have ever asked for. And when security would come by, and my friend Freddie and I would stay with her for like 2 hours. And whenever security would come by, she'd turn and say, back off there with me, which she didn't have to do. And, but the other thing is, I had lost somebody very close to me in New York, who was very, very, very famous. And she was in awe of, as she was with a lot of famous artists. And so the day of the Shiva, I came to New York and I went to the daytime show. And she knew it was a hard day for me. And so she asked, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And then I told her I was going to the Shiva in a fairly iconic house. And she said, take pictures. Call me when you get home. Tell me who was there. And it got me out of myself. And I had taken a picture at that very moment. And this was us backstage at the daytime show. And it was like, that was the first time I had smiled that day. And it was something that she would do instinctively. But then she'd say, are you okay? Okay, good. Who else was there? Dan, were there any things, Dan, that you looked at and said that either she was so ahead of her time or that she could have gone even further? Was there anything like that you looked at her and were in awe, on?
Well, not having my business wasn't working with a comedian like I did. I just played piano for her, and I would sit and watch this from behind when she would do her act. And it was amazing to see like this computer running around on stage telling these jokes without a miss, you know, and it was like a performance piece because hit the stage, it was Joan Rivers. When she hit the steps off the stage, it was Mrs. Rosenberg.
Right.
And it was amazing just to see the nerve endings in her eyes and what's back there making this happen.
Right.
For me.
It was like a computer. And Charles, when you worked with her and she was writing the show, the recall, I remember even to the end, that the recall was immediate, that she could remember a joke from 30 years ago. Did you find that, Charles?
Well, I wasn't in that situation with her because with this thing I was working with her was very much about her emotional life. So I wasn't writing comedy for her, but it was more just me asking her about her marriage and her problems with Edgar and her, her mother and her,
Was there anything that surprised you about what she told you? Was there something that you went, wow?
Well, actually, just she would tell me like this litany of horrible stories. The recurring theme was that she was fucked over by this one and fucked over by this one, and and betrayed, and I exist in a rather gentle form of show business, off-Broadway theater. It's very different. So she would just tell me just on and on these horrible stories, and I said, "Oh, it's so ugly." I said, "I would think you would just hate show business." And she looked at me like I was totally insane. She loved show business. That was the thing. And I got the feeling where she got the most emotional with me, more than her mother's death and everything, was when Johnny Carson blacklisted her, and she just his rage and tears. It was so full of the fact that this career for a moment was in jeopardy and could be destroyed by him. And
and it was made by him too. So again, how interesting, how tenuous it was.
Yeah. But it just was so, the stories were just endless of just being fucked over, but she loved every second of it.
Yeah, I kind of felt that she kind of attracted, consciously or unconsciously, dramatic situations that sometimes were of her own making and sometimes were not. I don't know necessarily how aware of that consciously she was, but Frank, you worked, again, you talk about a dramatic situation. You came into her life with the dramatic situation. Did you learn anything from how she handled her life that has helped you?
Oh, yes. Things I've learned starting from years ago was, like, every time you guys were talking about letters she wrote you and fan mail, everything I ever wrote to her as a child as well, up until an adult, she'd answer it. You'd call the phone, she would answer the phone herself. So I do that. If I ever get a nice letter or an email, I answer it. She always said, without the audience, she'd be nothing, and she's right. And so, yes, I learned that from her. And I also like her, the way she is fun on stage, but she's very formal at home. I'm actually the same way. And I use that line, I keep working because I like to live nice. I learned that from her. We have that same gaudy taste, So a lot of things I did pick up from her, but just how nice she was to everybody is what I try to do. And I just want to say something, Jackie B. I'm a huge fan of you. I love you. And your comedy is hysterical. And every time she did one of your jokes, I knew it was yours because you were just a genius.
Oh, Frank, thank you. And I'm a huge fan of yours and Charles and Dan. I love all of you. This is like an embarrassment of bitches.
Yes, great panel. You guys are all wonderful.
Well, I want to, before I go to Jackie, I want to bring up what Frank just said, which was when I was at the daytime show, one of the first things I had to do was literally bring Joan from the stage door to the car. That was it. You would think that was an easy job that a kid couldn't fuck up. I fucked it up because we came out the stage door and there was a woman there, or a bunch of people, but one woman in particular who wanted to talk about how she had somebody who committed suicide and Joan got her through it and blah, blah, blah. And my job was to say, thanks, but we have to go. And Joan stopped me and said, wait in the car. And I go in the car, and the person who had sent me to get her said, where is she? I said, she told me to go to the car. And they said, you had one job, get her from here to there. And so when Joan came, she's like, do you know why I told you to go to the car? Those people made me who I am. I always have time for them. And she told me something I will never forget. It's easier to sign the autograph or take the picture than explain why you can't. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, again, all of us learn so much, is that whenever I'm in a bad mood or whatever, if someone recognizes me, wants to take a picture, how happy am I that anyone gives a rat's ass? Jackie, did you have any experiences like this? I'm sure.
Well, in my brain, all these stories are, I don't know if I'm staying on topic, but I just remember these moments with her. The very first time when I was first hired for Fashion Police, Tony said, we're doing the Grammys tonight, which means all the writers go to E at around 3 p.m. and literally stay until 6 in the morning, writing jokes, eating cold pizza. But Joan wants you to come to the house. It'll just be you, me, and Joan, and watch the pre-show and watch the Grammys. And this, unfortunately, was the night after Whitney Houston had died.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know Tony Tripoli. I don't know if you guys know me very well, but the three of us, it was so horrible / fabulous. The jokes, we could not help ourselves. I mean, that's the only way to survive as a human, is to joke about the horrible things. And we were just on fire. And it was the first time I'd ever met her. And we were just saying rotten joke after politically incorrect rotten joke. And at one point, she just turned to me and she very quickly said, get it all out, because we can't say any of this on TV.
Right.
And I just always tell people, this is how we have survived as a human race. Do not tell people what they can joke and not joke about. You have to know their heart. When she did Lady Bunny's 50th birthday roast, she couldn't physically be there. So she said, I'm going to make a video, and, you're my drag queen writer. So Lady Bunny is a drag queen, write some jokes. So the very first joke I wrote was, I am so thrilled to be here. As of this moment, I have now officially roasted more people than Hitler. And, you can put that joke and be very, like, oh my God, I knew. She was like, oh my God, what a great opening. Perfect. And Tony Tripoli once said, you haven't lived until you've had to sit down and explain what a power bottom is because of the joke that some drag queen wrote for your boss. So
happily, Tony could demonstrate, so it was fine.
Let me just say one other thing. Occasionally, she would literally, we'd sit at the table and you'd make a joke about something like that, and the table would laugh, and she would be honest enough to say, tell me why that's funny.
Explain it to me. Right.
Yeah. I love it.
Oh God, I had something I was just going to click to show, but I don't have any idea what it was. But let's, but it's funny, we've touched on something, and I guess we really should discuss Melissa. Now, and Dan knows this, we've talked about this. I had asked Melissa to be on. She was going to be on. She had a conflict, so she couldn't be on. But talk about a very complicated and very good, and all the emotions you can have. And I met Missy. I say Missy, she'd hit me if Jan knows. You can't call Melissa Missy anymore. I knew her as a 14-year-old, a typical 14-year-old who rolled her eyes at her mother and was embarrassed by her parents, and eventually, grew up as we all did, but wanted her own life. And once Edgar died and once they were estranged, Joan and Melissa were estranged and then back together, it was almost like Joan, in many ways, got the daughter she wanted all along, but Melissa, sort of any free will and anything she wanted for herself, kind of got pushed aside to just be there for her mother. And it's kind of a great story and a tragic story in so many ways. Deanne, do you see it that way at all, or is it just me?
Well, I mean, I always felt like I just showed up. And I would just watch what was going on. I kept uninvolved with that because I didn't think about contributing to situations. Mm-hmm. But I was there when they were trying to sell the house in Bel Air, and it was chaotic.
Yeah,
Melissa was in and out, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And I remember standing in Joan's office because I was looking for Dorothy, and I was over there working in the basement and putting some stuff together for her. And she came in extremely upset. I've never seen her sobbing like this. And I just said, "You got the room." Oh. And I just left. I never questioned, never said anything about it.
Right.
But, she didn't like you to, like, we tried to take her out for dinner once. And she invited us for dinner. There was 4 of us together. And so we decided to take her out, surprise her. And she got furious at the table. Mm-hmm. Checked the check envelope, the folder, and threw it across the restaurant, screaming at us for doing this. And we're like, okay, it's okay. We're just, you've been so good to us. She wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
She calmed down right away, but she just wouldn't let us do that.
Yeah, I think the only one she would accept things, that sort of love back was really Melissa. Again, they were so close, and at a certain point it was all they really had. Melissa had gone through a divorce, Edgar was dead, and it was the two, and then Cooper, of course. And we should bring up, I guess Charles would know about this as well, is that Joan and Melissa and Cooper spent a lot of time with God's Love We Deliver, which was the charity in New York where they would go and deliver meals to homeless or shut-ins, people who were sick, people who were suffering with AIDS. And when Joan was on Celebrity Apprentice, that was her charity. And she would make Melissa and Cooper go with her on Thanksgiving. Was it Thanksgiving or Christmas? It might have been both. Thanksgiving. To make sure people had food for the holiday. And here they are delivering. And it was important that Joan passed this on, that to those who much is given, much is expected, and you have to pass it on. And I think it was a great example to set for Cooper. Charles, I'm sure you knew about a lot of that.
I knew she was doing it, but I can't really, don't have anything to add. I do have a funny story that the last Christmas that I spent with her, she came to my Christmas party with this very elegant friend of hers, the Countess Sons, this very beautiful woman, the Countess. And when they got to my building, there's the doorman, and then there's 2 sides to the building. I'm on the west side, and she'd been there a number of times, but the stupid doorman just let her. She ended up going to the left side of the building and went to the wrong apartment. And one of my neighbors is this older gay man, and he was just sitting in his underwear, watching TV, and suddenly the doorbell rings on Christmas Day, and the whole hell of them. So he just opened the door just in his underpants, and there's Joan and the Countess. And just, is this Charles Busch's party? And you went like, what kind of gay party did she think I was inviting her to? And he said, no, he lives on the west side of the building. So she said, put your pants on, you're coming with us. He brought back in between. She gave the stupid doorman $100 bill, but who later got fired. Anyway, so then she and the Countess show up, and they're in the, she's in this incredible fur coat, but she didn't want to hang it on the rack with, the other coats. So she went into my bedroom, and I had this little kind of tuffet where I keep extra towels, and she stuffs this, extraordinary fur coat in with my old towels. Yeah. And then, but she would give me advice, though, but it was terrible advice. No, I never listened to a word she said. No, just one time she said, say yes to everything. And later I said to her, I did as you said, and I regretted bitterly saying yes to all of those things.
Frank, was there any examples of like advice or those kind of personal moments that you had?
I don't know about.
Well, going back to Melissa, did you have any relationship with Melissa?
I did. We actually, Joan, Melissa, myself, and Alex, my partner, went to Disney. Was it Disneyland together?
Wow.
And we all wanted to go like on space. And that's, what did you want to take? Splash Mountain. He wanted to take Joan on Splash Mountain, and Melissa was all for it as a young kid. She would not get her hair wet.
Yeah.
And can I tell you, I didn't realize, like, when you're a kid and you grow up with somebody like that, they're a big star, but you don't realize how big until you go to Disneyland. And this was even at a low point in her career when she was doing like Hollywood Squares and stuff, but got mobbed, like crazy mobbed, like you were with Madonna. Right. And I was so happy for her to see, because she, like you all said, lights up, and when the attention's on her, but she had the security Disney guard, and I thought she was a great mother, a typical Jewish mother. She would have did anything for her child or her grandchild, and that's what I loved about her, because she was a star, but she was a mother first, and that's what I loved.
Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned that, and looking back, and again, I'm looking at it from the outside. How fabulous to have Joan Rivers as your mother. But if those people are constantly infringing on your life with your mother, you'd be rolling your eyes as well. Jackie, you worked with Melissa. God, I'm sorry. Mel, I have to, and I will say there was a point where Melissa went from Missy to Mel, and it was very clear that, she's not that kid anymore. She's now her own person. You worked with her when she was running the show, basically. So did you see how protective she was of her mother and that relationship?
Oh, that's all I saw. I mean, I wasn't around for any of that, I don't know, whatever they went through, it seemed to be all cleared up, and there's mutual respect. And I mean, they loved each other like no one I had ever met. And there's always a part of you that thinks like, oh God, this is the ultimate nepotism. Like, does she really deserve to be the executive producer of this show? And then you spend 5 minutes with them, and I'm like, okay, they bring out the best in each other. Right. I mean, maybe at one point it came from a bad place. I have no idea, but it really works. And, maybe Melissa didn't even know that she had that in her. So,
who knows?
Pushed her a little, but they really, really did take care of each other. And Joan's relationship with Cooper was off the charts. I mean, there was no one, that she loved more than Cooper. So I just saw good stuff. Occasionally flare up, as there always is in family and creative endeavors, but then put both of those together. I do remember sitting around that table then, and I kind of feel like I need to bring this up. I would say talk about the elephant in the room, but I don't want to put myself down. We eventually went on strike, the writers of Fashion Police, and a lot of people, and I'll never forget that pitch session where we had decided we were going to bring it up, because she was not happy. I mean, you could tell she was not only angry, but so hurt. And really considered it the ultimate betrayal. And it was hard to watch. It was hard to experience, because at one point when the shit hit the fan and it was literally happening, I couldn't believe this came out of me. But I said, Joan, this is the last thing that any of us ever wanted to happen. No one wants to upset you. When I sit down to write jokes for you, as weird as this sounds, all I'm trying to do is make mommy happy, which is my own psychological thing. And she stopped and looked at me, and I felt like it sort of sunk in for a second, but then it was the ultimate betrayal, and there was no turning back.
Right.
So,
No, I know it was an ugly time, especially for people who don't know. She was a member of the Writers Guild, so in the Writers Union. So the writers wanted to unionize and get benefits and blah blah blah. And you had the network on one side and the writers on the other, and her right in the middle. Like, where do I go? So it was a very tense. How long did that last, Jackie?
Oh, I'm so bad at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was months. It was months.
Time. I'm bad at makeup. Here's the thing that I remember. I remember feeling like you have the #1 show on me, but there was still that fear in her that it could all be taken away. And the sad thing, it could be. But I thought, you know what? Fight for yourself and fight for us. But I really felt bad. And, you know, there's a part of me that every time I'm talking about how wonderful she was, I think, oh, there's somebody watching thinking, well, then why did you sue her? But, you know, say it herself. That was business. I mean, we're talking to Frank. You know?
Well, exactly right. And I'm gonna, jumping off from that. For a brief time, she had left E and gone to the TV Guide channel. And this is just a personal anecdote, which was that she was at the TV Guide channel for about a year and a half. And when she was there, and again, I still was on the red carpet. She was still letting me, except I wasn't at E now. I'm at TV Guide, and she had her a manager, Billy Samuth, with her, who's a whole other issue. And when she was with us, you could make her laugh like a kid because it was playing. We were all very silly. So we were walking by from the TV Guide pavilion. She was going to leave because she had to go start editing to get ready for Fashion Police, or not Fashion Police, whatever it was called at that point. And the E pavilion was there, and they had all these roses. And all you had to point it out to her and say, you know, you should take those flowers. And she'd go, you know, you're right. Film this. And so I have these pictures of her taking the flowers. And there was a very brief video, which I don't think you're going to be able to see very well, but just this little clip.
I got them for you. Okay.
And that's it. Just stealing the flowers from the E thing. Saying, you got it? Good, let's leave. But one of the last things she did was a big show in Provincetown, which ironically enough, one of her biggest shows was to 2 sold-out audiences in Provincetown over 4th of July. She still had performed in New York at the Laurie Beecham, but this was a big show. Tony Tripoli, as Jackie mentioned, her head writer, had opened for her. Well, the night before, she had done an interview on CNN, which was probably one of her last big interviews. And I just want to show a clip because I think this also sums up where she had gone as a later performer. Take a look.
All right. Yeah, and people love to laugh. I mean, clearly that's why people love you. But they also know that you have some shock value to you. I mean, on the cover of your book, you're wearing a fur, and you knew that there would probably be animal rights activists.
You know, this whole interview is becoming a defensive interview.
No!
Are you wearing leather shoes?
Yeah,
shut up.
I'm talking. Oh, but you did hear it in some of those press conferences. There were people who were upset, and you're just saying,
no. I'm going. I really am going because all you have done is negative.
No.
All you have done is negative. I haven't heard that. I make people laugh for 50 years. I am put on earth to make people laugh. My book is funny. I wear fur that was killed 15 years ago. I work for animal rights. Stop it with, and you do this, and you're mean, and you're that. You are not the one to interview a person who does humor. Sorry.
Are we serious?
I will never forget that moment. I had seen the clip. The next day I saw her and she's like, did you see that bitch? And blah. Wow. It was sort of unreal. And I found that my whole life with her, there were people who got it and people who didn't. Deanne, did that get worse as she got older? Did the fact that she became sort of an icon make it easier, less easy?
I think she would get angry. I would watch her get angry at situations, and then it was gone.
Right.
Then it was done. And I never would discuss any of this with her. Yeah. But I would just really sit and watch this, because you didn't know all the time where she was coming from or what was going on in there. But I just watched her reactions to things and watched how she responded. I would just stand there and I just watched this, because I had to see how this worked. And one day I asked her on the Late Show, what makes you do this? So, because I watched her backstage before the first episode, getting fluffed up to go out, and the look on her face was priceless. It was like she wanted to run out of the building, And I said, why do you do this? How do you do this? She says, because tomorrow could be my last check.
Yeah. Well, I think, Charles, this goes to what you were saying about all the time she was fucked over and hurt, that she was always ready for it to happen, and she would attack when she felt it around her.
Well, I just think it's unfortunate nowadays, particularly for elderly actors, or performers, when the press will just thrust a microphone at the airport and ask their opinion of some very difficult current event, and invariably, they're kind of old and they're not hearing it right, and they get in terrible trouble. I've seen it happen on Angela Lansbury, where Barbara Streisand. They start asking these people impossible questions, and they should probably just say, "Sorry, I can't comment." But they, so like with Joan, I think at one point at the airport, somebody said, like, what do you think about Al-Qaeda or something, or whatever? and she got it all wrong, and she said, like, Palestinians, they should all die. She's a racist, and she was vilified and all this thing, because she got it all wrong and got the name wrong.
There in her head at the time.
Yeah, she didn't know. They're always in trouble. And Barbara Streisand got in terrible trouble, but Michael Jackson,
right?
Comment. Angela Lansbury suddenly in '93 was asked about with women Me Too issue, right, and says some old-fashioned notion, and then they're all down with her, to the guillotine. It's just. It's hard enough for a young person but you get an elderly person, no matter how vital they seem, and then something that to make a great statement on the issues of our time. It's cruel.
Yeah, Frank, you again, you're one of the few people who was sort of the target of that rage briefly, and yet obviously it disappeared and it was like it never happened. Did you ever go back and say, what were you thinking or whatever? Or do you just say, eh?
Well, I'm the same way. I'm like her. I could go to a 10, rant and rave for 5 minutes, and 5 minutes later it's over.
Right.
And my partner Alex always says to me, it's over for you, but though other people are not going to get over it as quickly. Right. Do you do the same thing, Jackie?
My mom was born in Italy, so yes. Jews are essentially the same people, and
I snap over the situation because everything's going. It's always the biggest and worst problem, right? Every day it becomes a different. But then I'm done. But I use that rage to get out like she did, and then you move on. Right. So for me, it worked great because Joan Rivers had a point as an adult. It had a very good point that I didn't understand as a child. Right. Couldn't even went to court with her if it wasn't for Rickless's money. He thought publicity, wherever I was a kid, I didn't know publicity.
Right.
But it did do a lot of publicity. I didn't realize what it was doing at the time. I turned down Larry King. He called me. I go, I can't.
You were the only one
from the airport. So huge. He was like the Oprah at that time. Turning down, didn't know. But what she did made my career stand out from any other Joan Rivers impersonator. And then had me on her late night show.
And
had me on all the TV. So she made the joke that you said earlier, who sued who. So she lightened it, made it nice. And I understood at that point. I didn't have to ask her what was the problem.
Right. Jackie, you were around working with her at those last years. And, you know, she would, again, always be somehow in the news, saying something controversial or saying something funny that people got or didn't get. Did you find that she was okay with that? Was that sort of part of the game, staying relevant?
Well, you know, when I watch that clip, I think, how long have you been doing this? And how long have you been pushing the envelope? And of course, people are going to ask about the negative stuff. And, you know, the reporter was not that negative. So I'm watching and I'm thinking, like, is she truly upset? Is she truly hurt? And part of me thinks because that's why she gets upset, is because she's hurt. She feels disrespected. Then I think, like, nobody would have talked about this interview. Nobody, you know, like, it was everywhere after she did that. So
and a lot of people did think it was a stunt.
Right. But there's nothing worse as a comedian than thinking your whole life's goal is to make people laugh, especially at the ugly stuff. And then they twist it and make it look like the complete opposite. You're a horrible person. You are a hack. You're making light of horrible things. We don't need to joke about sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows.
Well, that's not funny.
No, of course not. And, you know, and I hate to say this because it's such a weird turn of phrase, but she left at just the right time because it has gotten even worse. And she would have been canceled 10 times over and misunderstood and blown out of proportion. There's no irony. Everyone has irony, poor blood.
And everyone has to be politically correct.
And there's really few people hiding behind comedy and irony to make their truly misogynistic, homophobic, racist points. You didn't just catch somebody accidentally revealing who they really are. They are trying to make a point, and they went a little too far. Everybody wants comedians to push the envelope and go, you know, and be outrageous, and then you put your big toe, you know, 1 inch over the line, and they're looking for a rope. I mean, it's great. So she would not have been, you know, she would not have. I don't think she would have gotten in a lot more trouble than she already.
We're going to have to wrap up. People who are watching on Facebook and YouTube, get your questions in. We're going to go. I'm just going to do one more round with people. But if you have a question, get it in. I do have Robert L. had posted. Thanks for doing the show. I loved working with Joan and Melissa. She was always game for whatever ideas I've had. Robert L., of course, most of us who here know Robert. And thank you, Robert. Rocky Durand, who's been watching every show. Jackie Beat, I still have the autographed 1 millionth vagina joke.
We auctioned it off. She autographed it. And part of my hip, one of my 2 new hips, is because of that. Yeah, 1 millionth vagina joke.
Yeah, I remember it vividly. Thank you to everyone who has posted. Let me just ask, just going around one last time, Dan, where do you think she would stand today in terms of Trump, Me Too, political correctness? Is it better she didn't have to deal with any of this, or would she have?
Well, there was never political correctness.
No, that's true.
And I became aware of the fact that she really liked him.
Yeah.
Which I was kind of surprised at, but I don't think that she would like us now. I don't.
Certainly who he has become.
Yeah. No. Become. I don't think that. I don't know what she would say about all of this.
Yeah.
You know, I wish she was still here to witness this, but you know, because I would love to hear what she'd say.
Yeah, I would too. Charles, what about you?
No, I think she would have been. I've thought about it a lot. I think she would have been in a terrible quandary because she was very, very grateful to Trump for putting her on Celebrity Apprentice, which was really a big comeback for her. And that's what really got her the opportunity to do Joan and Melissa and Fashion Police, the comeback from that. So she was very grateful and a very loyal person. So then But then the other hand, her gay audience, her audience meant more to her than anything in life. So I think what she would have had to weigh her, disloyalty to this guy who gave her a break, and then losing everybody by being known as a Trump supporter. So I think ultimately she would have probably had to betray him. But I wonder, she would have been in a terrible situation for her. People are always saying, "Oh, she was a Republican." I know she liked the Reagans because they're show business and glamorous, But she told me she voted for Obama. I don't know why people keep thinking that she was like some good conservative.
Well, again, I think she had a conservative side to her, but she was certainly fiscally, but socially, she was very liberal. I think all of us can attest to. Oh, see, somebody's getting a better call. Frank, what do you think? Joan, in today's world, what would have happened?
I asked that a lot because I knew she loved Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But what's going on with everything in him, I think she would have been torn. She would have said something, made a joke about it, I guess. But I do think it would be a tough time for her.
Yeah.
Because it's so strange that at this point we have the most outspoken president ever. He will talk about grabbing people and stuff like that. Yet we all of a sudden are the most conservative people in the world ourselves. Right. And oh my God, you say something. I used to do a whole monologue on different race people, Polish, Italian. Now, if somebody did a gay joke and it's funny, I laugh. An Italian joke, it's funny, I laugh.
Sure.
You can't do that anymore.
Right.
It's wrong. I'm afraid.
That was her act.
To say what I believe on Facebook and all that stuff, because I learned the hard way that people will attack you. So unfortunately, I shut up. It's the coward's way out. But I'm afraid to say something because it's Vegas is small. They know where you live. You know what I'm saying? So it's also frightening.
Jackie, you worked with her in a show where she was applauded and criticized every minute. And so what do you think she would have done in today's world? I mean, how is she better off that she didn't have to deal with it like Rickles?
Well, first of all, I mean, you would be surprised at the jokes that she just shut down. I remember once, and again, I am, like someone's grandma. It's like, I'm not sure who we were talking about, but I think it was Ariana Grande, like in some hot pants. And some of the jokes were just shameless fat jokes. And she just shut them down and said, you know what? No, I mean, this is a young girl who, reportedly has had an eating disorder. Like, I just don't want to go there. So it's not like she was a bull in a, china shop. She knew there were lines, but, you say a joke and you can't give somebody an X-ray of your heart every time to show where you can usually tell where someone's coming from if the joke is said, with love, or if it's just mocking somebody or like very hateful. And the problem is no one has the time or energy to do the math even in their head. So I just feel like she would be, these jokes about Michelle Obama, being born a man. The problem is Joan makes a joke about something like that, but you look on the internet and there are idiots who really believe this. They think every photo of Michelle Obama as a little girl are these photoshopped, you can't argue with crazy. So she was too funny and too smart for her own good. And like I said, things have only gotten worse, and I would hate to think what she personally and professionally would be going through.
Yeah, I think she would, as Charles said, I think it really would have been a quandary. And I think, as again, when we look at Trump versus Hillary, I think she would have been so happy to vote for a woman and see a female president. On the other hand, there was that side of her that loved the status and the rich and the fact that he helped her. She really would have been in a pickle. I think she may have voted for Trump, but I think she would have turned at a certain point. I hope. I don't know. I think it's impossible to know. Guys, we could sit and talk about Joan forever. We'll see you, I guess, next year. But any last thoughts? I mean, all right, last thoughts. How do you want to remember Joan? Dan, go.
She just gave me my career here. I mean, I came out here with really not knowing what the hell I was going to do, because I came out here playing piano on 42nd Street, and she gave me a job on her talk show, and that was it. And then I realized TV is much like just the same as theater,
right?
Shows. So and it just went from there. And then really she did that. If she hadn't done that, I don't know what I'd be doing.
Well, you'd have a lot less money.
I have a lot less of everything. I would be still in New York shuffling for a piano gig,
And I guess I didn't show this picture, but Dan, here you are with the Tony Tripoli we keep talking about at Joan Rivers' house. Is this the house? Is it the house? Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Okay.
I don't remember where that was.
Well, it's a picture. That's all I.
Send that to me. I've never seen that.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Dan, thank you for being on the show. I love you.
Thank you.
Charles, how do you want to remember her? What is the lasting impact for you?
Well, just she was just this magical presence in my life. I just being with her and spending time with her, going to an Andrew Sisters movie on a rainy Sunday at the Film Forum, and I just loved a kind of magic has gone out of my life that they'll never be the same. I miss her terribly.
Charles, I love you. I'm glad you're still in my life, and thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you, honey. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, and I'll see you in another week or two. You'll be back
next week.
Bye, sweetheart. Okay, Frank Marino. What was the lasting influence on your life? How do you remember her?
Well, of course, there's a mentor. And like they said, person who gave me a job. She'd actually make jokes saying, I guess my career was powerful enough to support 2 households. And actually it did. And I just
many
loved
more.
Everything about her, from the glamour to the outspokenness. And I think if she was here, the world would be listening to what she was saying and maybe have different views. And I love that she would talk about, like, right now, I might have to hire you, Jackie, because when we go back to work, the number one thing is going to be, you're going to have to do the virus jokes. You're going to have to talk about the riots and what's happening. Right. Or you're not going to be timely. And to do it, and
she
not
was always
line,
timely.
Very hard not to offend 50% of the room each time you do it. So you might get a phone call, sweetheart.
And Frank,
but I love Joan, and I thank you for having me here. And that
Frank,
play that you.
And wait, we've lost Frank. What happened? Oh, go ahead.
I'm like a nightmare.
No, you're fine. But Frank, I just want to say, where are you when Vegas starts up again? Where will you be?
At the first hotel that opens. No. I'm at the Tropicana.
All right, I'm not asking where you're going to have sex. Where are you going to perform?
Legends in Concert, Tropicana Hotel, as soon as the Tropicana Hotel opens. So we're waiting on the governor. We're waiting on Gaming Commission. There's a lot of stuff. But right now, I'm just really enjoying relaxing. So it's not been a problem. And I would love to get a copy, if any of you guys know of that play that Joan Rivers did about the red carpet. I've looked everywhere. I don't know.
All right. I might have something. I'll get in touch with you.
Great. And thank you guys so much.
Thank
Great
you,
seeing you, Jackie. Bye.
And Jackie, it just comes down to us 2 hacks. Lasting memory, impact. What do you remember?
I think I touched on it earlier. What strikes me is always her work ethic, coupled with how she did treat and view the fans. They really were the people who put her where she was. She thought it could end at any moment, which I always thought was a little sad, but it was true. Yeah. So
We're in a disposable climate where, you know, when you're gone, there's somebody that's going to come along. Joan who?
And that's true for 23-year-olds. So you can imagine an 80-year-old woman and how she, you know, but she was literally the ultimate survivor. And the work ethic, I honestly, there are not words. I mean, I would stop and think, okay, and I keep saying this, but she's in her 80s and she's waking up at 5 a.m. to get fully made up. You know, she never gave, you know, she never served anything other than 110% Joan, looking gorgeous. And just like she said yes to everything, like we said. And the work ethic is what really strikes me. Listen, you may be talented and magical and gifted and, you know, wonderful, but if you do not put the work behind it, sorry. And she knew that.
And not only that, she would have wanted to go out. She always joked, to have a heart attack on stage. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the night before she went into that procedure, she was at the Laurie Beach and performing. That's what she loved. That was, you know, Melissa would be the first to say that the career was as much of a child as she was. The career and the fans were everything to her. And
I also love the fact that it was the Laurie Beachman, which is a relatively small room where she had to change in a hallway and, you know, gave the money to, you know, animal rights groups.
Didn't need the money. Yep.
Yeah, so it wasn't like, you know, oh, great, she, you know, she was
at Square Garden.
Square Garden, exactly. So it was so pure.
It, you know, it is kind of fitting. And I just, first off, I want to show this picture because she would have loved it because she was so thin there. She would have said, show a picture where I look thin. So she's kind of with us still. Jackie, thank you for doing the show. You never say no to me. I appreciate it so much. And you know, we'll have you back. Obviously, where else are we going? We're here.
Me and Charles Busch.
You know, you're my go-tos.
The Laverne and Shirley of the gay world.
Thank you for doing it, honey.
Thank you, sweetheart.
And thank you for everyone for watching. Do not forget Thursday's show. We are celebrating LA Pride at 50, virtual Pride. So you can't go out to a festival, but I will be here with Mama. We will be co-hosting as we did the main stage for over 7 years. And we will have some special guests performing. We'll have people from behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, all around the scenes. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a little button right here. I don't know where the hell it is. Right there. Okay. It's over there somewhere. Click on it and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It costs you nothing and it gives me oodles of pleasure. And of course, we do still need a social media coordinator because I'm old. I can't do this all. Thank you all for watching. We will see you on Thursday. And don't forget, you were watching Billy Masters live. And if we're here, we're live. Bye-bye, guys.